In this video we're going to have a look at what is meant by the RBA's charter and how the RBA act in a counter-cyclical manner. So, first of all, the government's main aim is to keep headline inflation between 2 to 3% over the course of the business cycle. However, even though they quote headline in the definition of their goal for monetary policy, the underlying or the core rate of inflation is what they're more likely to look at to determine whether they change interest rates. The underlying or core rate of inflation gives them the best indication of what's likely to happen to the CPI or inflation in the future, and therefore is the more likely thing that they're going to look at to determine whether they increase or decrease the cash rate. So when will the RBA act to increase interest rates, and when will they not bother to act? If inflation is caused by one-off factors, they are less likely to act. So if prices have only been increasing for, say, a couple of months, so for example, there's been a short-term, say 1 or 2 month spike in petrol prices, or a natural disaster has caused some prices to go up for a short period of time, then they're less likely to act because they know that it's not going to be persistent, and they know if they were to increase the cash rate now that they may have to lower it again in the future once those inflationary pressures persist and start to slow down again. So if inflation is caused by one-off factors, it's unlikely for them to change their cash rate. If inflation is caused by persistent price pressures, so for example, if it's caused by a low Australian dollar, which is causing higher import prices as well as more demand for our exports, or if it's caused by increased consumer confidence or high retail sales levels or something like that that has more persistent pressures on inflation. And we will look at some things what we call leading and lagging indicators to determine which ones are more important for looking at the inflationary settings. But if prices are more persistent, inflation is caused by more persistent price pressures, then they're more likely to act in the economy. So one-off factors, they don't really act. More persistent price pressures, they will act. The RBA act in a counter-cyclical fashion. So what I mean by that, again, just like budgetary policy, if inflation is too high or we're in a boom, they're likely to increase the cash rate to try and slow down the level of demand pull inflation. They will also act to slow down, to reduce the cash rate, to increase the cash rate if inflation is caused by cost-push inflationary pressures, but we'll look at that a bit more later. The RBA like to act in a preemptive manner, so they try and stop inflation before it occurs. They look at leading indicators to determine inflationary pressures going forward. If the economy is in a trough and there are low levels of spending, they're likely to decrease the cash rate to lower interest rates and to focus on the other goals of strong economic growth and employment. So at the moment, inflation is really low, it's hovering around 1.5 to 1%, and therefore the RBA is being really expansionary and the cash rate is really low to try and stimulate full employment and growth. Alright, in their charter, the RBA state that they have 3 responsibilities, and their 3 responsibilities look something like this. First one, maintenance of the stability of the currency, and that means keeping inflation under control to protect our purchasing power. Once they achieve stability of the currency, they then focus on our other 2 goals that are part of domestic economic stability. So that's when they'll start focusing on full employment, getting people into work, and economic growth. But in their charter, it's the stability of the currency, 1, maintenance of full employment, and 3rd, trying to improve the economic prosperity and welfare of the people of Australia. The current focus of monetary policy, is firstly to achieve low inflation in the medium term, which will assist us to achieve strong economic growth and full employment in the long term. And a focus on low inflation should also take into account the impact on growth and employment. The RBA is less likely to tighten monetary policy if it will push the economy into recession and increase unemployment rates to high levels. If inflation is achieved, then the focus is on economic growth and full employment, providing this does not jeopardise inflation. So basically, they'll focus on inflation first, and then if that is under control, they will focus on their other goals of economic growth and full employment. That's all.